Close your eyes for a moment, not physically, but inwardly. Imagine stepping outside of everything you know, your body, your thoughts, your beliefs, and simply observing what remains. What do you see as the world as solid and certain as it seems? Or is there something beneath it? Something shifting, fluid, perhaps even unreal? This is the question that lies at the heart of one of the most profound teachings found in Eastern philosophy, Maya, the illusion of reality. For centuries, seekers have asked, why does life feel so real, yet slip through our fingers like sand? Why do we chase happiness only to find it vanishes? Why do we believe ourselves separate, when deep down we feel connected to something vast and unseen? The answer may lie in Maya, not as deception or falsehood, but as a veil over truth. A distortion of perception that keeps us from seeing the deeper reality beneath appearances. Maya is not about lying to yourself. It's about how the mind naturally interprets the world, not always accurately, but through layers of conditioning, memory, and belief. In Hindu and Buddhist thought, Maya represents the illusory nature of the material world. Not that the world doesn't exist, but that it is not perceived as it truly is. Like a dream that feels real while you're inside it, Maya makes us believe that time, space, and identity are absolute, when in fact, they are constructs shaped by the mind. It is the reason why two people can witness the same event and walk away with completely different interpretations. It is the reason why joy can turn to sorrow in an instant. And it is the reason why suffering often feels so real. Because we believe in the illusions we create around it. So let us begin this journey together. Now let us ask the question that is echoed through time. What if the world is not what you think it is? More importantly, what would change if you saw beyond the illusion? The word Maya comes from ancient Sanskrit, and at its core it means illusion. But not in the sense of falsehood or deception. Rather, Maya refers to the veil of perception. The way our minds interpret reality based on conditioning, senses, and beliefs. In Hindu philosophy, particularly in Advaita Vedanta, Maya is the force that makes us see separation where there is unity, permanence where there is impermanence, and identity where there is only awareness. It is the reason we believe ourselves to be individual souls trapped in physical bodies, rather than expressions of a single, infinite consciousness. Imagine looking at the world through a stained glass window. The colors are beautiful, the patterns intricate, but they distort what lies beyond. That is Maya. Not that the world is unreal, but that our perception of it is filtered, shaped by layers of thought, culture, memory, and emotion. Maya does not deny existence. It reveals that what we perceive is not the ultimate truth. It is like a dream. While you are inside it, everything feels real. But when you awaken, you realize it was never solid, never permanent, just a temporary state of mind. This idea is echoed across spiritual traditions. In Buddhism, the concept of sunyata, or emptiness, suggests that all phenomena lack inherent existence. They arise dependent on conditions, and dissolve when those conditions change. In Taoism, the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao, pointing to the limitations of language and perception. Even in Western philosophy, Plato's allegory of the cave illustrates how humans mistake shadows for reality, unable to see the light behind them. So, what exactly does Maya obscure? It hides the true nature of the self, the realization that we are not separate beings, but expressions of a unified field of consciousness. Maya creates the illusion of time, space, and identity, making us believe that we are born, live, and die as individuals, when in truth, we are part of something far greater. Maya is also responsible for the illusion of attachment, the belief that happiness lies in external things, relationships, achievements, possessions. We chase these things because Maya convinces us that they will bring lasting fulfillment. But no matter how much we gain, the satisfaction never lasts, because the source of peace was never outside us to begin with. Even suffering is shaped by Maya. Pain becomes suffering only when we resist it. When we believe that life should be different than it is, Maya tells us that joy is scarce, that loss is final, that death is an end. And so, we suffer not because life is cruel, but because we misinterpret it. This does not mean that the material world is meaningless. Far from it. Maya is not evil or negative. It is simply the mechanism through which consciousness experiences itself. Without Maya, there would be no duality, no contrast, no story. It is the stage upon which the drama of life unfolds. But understanding Maya gives us power. It allows us to step back from our perceptions, to question what we take for granted, and to recognize that reality is not fixed. It is fluid, shifting according to the lens through which we view it. When we begin to see through Maya, we start to notice how much of our suffering arises from false assumptions about who we are, about what matters, about what will make us happy. We see how easily we are swayed by appearances, by wealth, status, beauty, and power, even though none of these things last. We begin to understand that the body ages, the mind changes, and the ego shifts with time. But beneath all of it, there is something constant, something untouched by Maya. That something is awareness, pure, unchanging, and ever-present. And once we touch that awareness, even briefly, the illusions of Maya begin to lose their grip. We no longer need to chase after happiness because we realize it was never lost. We no longer fear death because we understand that the self is not confined to the body. We no longer cling to identity because we see that who we truly are cannot be defined by words, roles, or memories. This is the essence of awakening. Not escaping the world, but seeing it clearly. Because Maya is not meant to be rejected. It is meant to be understood. In that understanding, freedom begins. If Maya is the veil over truth, then our perception of reality is like a dream. Vivid, immersive, and deeply personal, yet not entirely accurate. We believe we see the world as it is. But in truth, what we experience is not reality itself, only our interpretation of it. Think about this. Your brain never actually touches the outside world. It receives electrical signals from your senses, sight, sound, touch, and constructs a version of reality based on those inputs. What you call the real world is actually a simulation built inside your mind. And what appears solid may be nothing more than mental projection shaped by culture, belief, and conditioning. Neuroscientists call this process perceptual relativity, the idea that what we perceive is not absolute, but relative to the observer. Two people can look at the same object and interpret it differently. A tree is just wood to one person, but sacred to another. This doesn't mean the world is imaginary. It means that what we see is filtered through a lens of assumptions, expectations, and past experiences. It shows us only part of the picture, and we mistake that partial view for the whole. A mountain is an obstacle to some, a calling to others. And so it goes. Everything depends on how the mind interprets it. Your attachments cloud your vision. All of it happens unconsciously. Like a dream you've forgotten you're dreaming. You do not see things as they are. You see them as you are. Not because anything has changed, but because your perception has shifted. Everything you see will appear reddish. The sky, the trees, other people. If you wear these glasses long enough, you'll come to believe that's how the world truly looks. Create stories. You begin to see the patterns behind the illusion. This aligns with the teachings of Maya. The reality is not fixed, but fluid. Even modern physics begins to echo this idea in quantum mechanics. Particles exist in multiple states until observed, suggesting that consciousness plays a role in shaping reality. Maya is not illusion in the sense of falsehood. It is illusion in the sense of limitation. So how does this affect your daily life? Imagine walking through the world wearing tinted glasses. Red lenses, say. That is Maya. It colors your perception, not through deception, but through habitual interpretation. Your beliefs shape your reality. Your fears distort your choices. But now, imagine taking off the glasses. Suddenly the world appears different. This is the essence of awakening. Not escaping the dream, but realizing you're dreaming while still inside it. When you begin to question your perceptions, when you start to notice how often your mind fills in gaps, makes assumptions, you start to notice how often you misinterpret others' intentions, how easily your thoughts create emotional reactions, how much of your suffering comes not from events themselves, but from the meaning you assign to them, and in that noticing, something changes. You begin to see beyond Maya, not by rejecting the world, but by seeing it more clearly, because Maya is not meant to be escaped. It is meant to be understood. We often define ourselves by what we do, how others see us, and the roles we play in life. I am a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a student, a leader, a follower. But who are you when none of these labels apply? When you strip away your name, your job, your relationships, even your memories, what remains? This is the question at the heart of Maya, the illusion that defines our sense of self. That the I we speak of so often is not a solid thing, but a shifting pattern of beliefs, experiences, and conditioning. We believe we are our thoughts, our emotions, our history. It does not change when your body ages, when your emotions shift, or when your thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky. But what if all of that is just a projection, a story told by the mind to make sense of the world? What you see is familiar, the shape of your face, the color of your eyes, the lines that mark time's passage. But this is only one version of yourself. If you look in the mirror tomorrow, or 10 years from now, the image will have changed. And yet something remains constant, the awareness behind the reflection, the one who sees. Maya tells us that identity is not fixed, it is fluid. Think of your reflection in a mirror. That awareness, that silent observer is not defined by appearance, age, or circumstance. Not because the ego is evil or wrong, but because it believes itself to be real. It thinks it is the whole, when in fact, it is only a small part of a much greater mystery. They seek happiness in things that change. Love, money, success, never realizing that the only thing that truly lasts is the awareness that witnesses all of it. Because Maya convinces us that without them, we would vanish. It makes us believe that we must earn worth, that we must prove value, that we must achieve something in order to matter. It tells us that without our name, our title, our past, we would be nothing. But what if the opposite is true? What if letting go of identity is not losing yourself, but finding yourself more deeply? In many spiritual traditions, the ego, the part of us that identifies with form, is seen as the greatest obstacle to truth. The ego wants to be known. It seeks validation, approval, recognition. It builds stories about who we are. I am strong. You're the space in which all of those arise. The stillness beneath the noise. The light behind the veil. I am broken. I am successful. I am unworthy. These stories become our reality, shaping how we see ourselves and how we interact with the world. But beneath all of that, beyond the masks we wear, the roles we play, the fears we carry, there is something else, something untouched by time. A presence that watches, feels, exists. This is the true self, not defined by gender, profession, or personality, but by awareness itself. And yet most people spend their entire lives mistaking the reflection for the source. They build their lives around the illusion of separateness, believing themselves to be isolated beings moving through a random universe. That you are more than your conditioning, more than your pain, more than your past. Maya thrives on this misunderstanding. It creates the illusion of permanence, where there is only impermanence. But the truth is far simpler than that. You do not need to become anything. The answer may surprise you. You already are. You are not your thoughts, your emotions, or your past. And once you begin to recognize that, really recognize it, something shifts. Stop identifying with the storm and start recognizing the sky behind it. You stop looking outside yourself for meaning and start seeing that it was always within. This is the beginning of awakening, the moment when you realize that Maya has been shaping your perception all along. And with that realization comes freedom. Because when you no longer take your thoughts and feelings as absolute truth, you begin to see through the illusion. You see that the person you thought you were, the one shaped by trauma, fear, and longing, is not the whole story. You are awareness, pure and unbroken. And that awareness has never been born. It will never die. It simply is. So ask yourself, who are you beyond your name, beyond your story, beyond everything you've ever been told? If you could step outside of yourself, outside of Maya, and look inward with complete honesty, what would you find? Would you find someone searching, struggling, afraid? Or would you find peace, quiet, steady, and always present, waiting patiently beneath the noise? Because the truth is not hidden. It is simply overlooked. And now, as you sit here reading these words, that truth is closer than ever. Just beneath the surface. Just behind the illusion. Just beyond Maya. If Maya shapes our perception of identity, the sense of I am, it also distorts our understanding of time, space, and separation. We live as if time is real, that we are moving forward in a linear fashion from birth to death, from past to future. But what if this linearity is just another veil? Another way the mind organizes experience. In dreams, time behaves differently. A moment can stretch into eternity, or an entire lifetime can pass in seconds. When you wake up, you realize that time was never fixed, only fluid, shaped by the dream itself. This is Maya. We feel alone, even in a crowd. We long for connection, yet struggle to truly feel unified with others. It tells us that time is absolute, when in truth, it may be nothing more than a mental construct, a way for consciousness to make sense of change and memory. The same goes for space. We believe ourselves to be separate beings, isolated within our own bodies, minds, and experiences. But again, what if this separation is not real? What if beneath all appearances, there is only one consciousness, appearing as many? Think about your own thoughts. Where do they come from? You don't consciously create them. They arise on their own, like ripples in a pond, and yet you claim ownership. This is my thought. But where does your thought end and someone else's begin? Have you ever had a thought that suddenly appeared in someone else's words? If even matter is connected beyond space, could consciousness be any different? They describe a feeling of knowing without thinking, of loving without limits, of being without boundaries. Have you ever felt something at a distance, sensing joy, pain, or longing without explanation? These moments suggest that consciousness is not confined to the body, that thoughts, emotions, and awareness flow beyond the illusion of individuality. This idea is echoed in quantum physics, which suggests that particles can influence each other across vast distances, a phenomenon known as entanglement. Maya convinces us that we are separate, that we exist independently from others. It tells us that love must be earned, that life is competition, that survival depends on dominance. But what if none of that is true? What if we have always been part of something greater, a field of awareness, a web of energy, a shared reality that only appears divided? Even in near-death experiences, many report a profound sense of unity, no longer feeling like a single being trapped in flesh, but instead becoming one with everything. This is not just a mystical experience. It is a glimpse beyond Maya. And if Maya can be seen through in death, why not in life? And why wait until the final breath to recognize the truth that has always been present? Now that we understand what Maya is, not deception, but the veil of perception, let's explore how it shapes our daily lives. Maya does not just influence how we see the world. It influences how we feel, how we act, and ultimately how we suffer. Every choice you make, every relationship you form, every fear you carry, every desire you chase, is filtered through Maya. Perhaps the person was having a bad day. Perhaps they were projecting their own pain onto you. We believe happiness comes from outside, from success, love, validation, possessions. But if these things can vanish in an instant, can they truly be the source of lasting peace? And yet in that moment, suffering arises, not from the words themselves, but from the meaning you assign to them. We believe ourselves to be separate beings, affected by external forces, when in truth, much of our suffering is born from our own interpretations. This is Maya at work. It creates stories about reality and then convinces us those stories are true. Even joy is shaped by Maya. Maya tells us they are. It makes us believe that fulfillment lies in something we don't yet have, always just out of reach, and so we chase relationships, careers, achievements, even spiritual enlightenment, believing that once we attain them, we will finally feel whole. The mind shifts when the story we told ourselves no longer holds. But the truth is, you were never broken. You were never incomplete. You were only seeing yourself through the lens of Maya, through the illusion of separation, lack, and limitation. That who we are is defined by our name, our roles, our history, and that without them, we would vanish. And this distortion leads to attachment, which is one of Maya's most powerful tools. When we become attached to outcomes, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Because life is fluid, it changes constantly. And Maya ensures that nothing remains the same for long. They forget the clarity they experienced, until another moment of crisis reminds them. Attachment is not just to objects or people, it is to identity, to beliefs, to the idea that life should be a certain way. So what happens when we cling to something that cannot last? We suffer. We suffer when the job ends, when the relationship dissolves, when the body ages, because Maya made us believe that permanence was possible, when in fact, nothing lasts forever. Even death is shaped by Maya. We fear it not because dying itself is painful, but because Maya tells us that everything ends with the body. But what if that isn't true? What if death is not the end, but a shift in perception with your past? What if the soul continues beyond the body, and Maya simply reshapes itself into a new dream? Many near-death experiences suggest exactly this. People report leaving their bodies, seeing light, feeling immense peace, and realizing that they are more than their physical form. Yet when they return, Maya reasserts itself. The illusion returns. It's the nature of Maya. It is not evil, nor is it meant to be escaped. It is meant to be understood. Because once you begin to see Maya for what it is, a veil over truth, you start to notice how often you are driven by illusions rather than reality. You begin to see how many of your fears are based on projections, not facts, but assumptions. You begin to see how many of your desires are rooted in the belief that something outside of you will bring inner peace, when in truth, this peace was always within. You begin to see how many of your attachments are to things that were never yours to keep. People, moments, identities, even your own body. And in that seeing, something begins to change. You stop identifying so strongly with your emotions, with your thoughts. You begin to observe them, like clouds passing through the sky of awareness. And as you do, you realize you are not your suffering, you are not your fears, you are not even your story, you are the witness behind all of it. It's a silent observer, the unchanging presence beneath the shifting surface of life. And once you touch that presence, even briefly, Maya loses its grip. Not because it disappears, but because you no longer mistake it for the whole truth. Now that we've explored what Maya is, how it shapes our perception of reality, identity, time, and separation, let's turn our attention to perhaps the most important question. How do you wake up from the dream? It is something to be seen through, because Maya is not something to be destroyed or escaped. It's about recognizing that you are not trapped in illusion, but simply seeing through it, mistaking the reflection for the source. Like a veil gently lifted, awakening is not about rejecting life. It's about seeing it more clearly. So how do you begin? The first step is awareness. You must begin to notice your thoughts, not just what they say, but how they shape your experience. By training your mind to rest in stillness, you begin to see the gaps between thoughts, those fleeting moments when there is no story, no identity, just presence. You must learn to observe emotions without becoming them, to witness sensations without clinging to them, to sit with silence long enough to hear the quiet voice beneath the noise. This is the beginning of waking up. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools for this process. In those moments, Maya loses its grip. You stop identifying so strongly with your roles, your fears, your past, and start recognizing yourself as the silent observer behind all of it. Another path is self-inquiring, asking the deepest questions, not for answers, but for clarity. Who am I, beyond my name? What remains when I let go of everything I think I am? Is the world really separate from me, or am I simply perceiving it that way? These are not intellectual puzzles. They're invitations to look inward, to peel back the layers of conditioning, belief, and habit that keep you asleep in the dream. And then there is detachment, not cold withdrawal, but conscious disengagement from the illusions that once held power over you. You begin to notice how much of your suffering comes not from what happens, but from what you believe should happen. You begin to see how often you react based on old wounds rather than present truth. You begin to feel how deeply you cling to people, to outcomes, to identities, even when they no longer serve you. Detachment is not about giving things up. It's about giving yourself back to yourself. It's about recognizing that peace does not depend on circumstances, but on your relationship with them. When you detach from Maya, from the need to control, to define, to hold on to, something shifts. You begin to live from a place of inner freedom rather than outer conditions. Others may move slowly, peeling away layers of illusion over years, even lifetimes. You begin to relate to others not from fear or need, but from presence and awareness. You begin to see that nothing lasts forever, and that is not a tragedy, but a gift. Because impermanence allows you to let go, to change, to grow. The path forward, waking up from Maya, is not a single moment. It is a lifelong journey. But you can learn to see it for what it is, a veil, not a wall. Some may experience sudden awakenings, moments of clarity where the veil lifts and they see the world differently. But the direction is always the same. Toward presence, toward truth, toward freedom. Because Maya will never disappear entirely. Not while you are alive, not while you are dreaming. A distortion, not a deception. A lens, not the whole picture. As you walk forward, carry this truth with you. You are not lost. You have only forgotten who you are. And now you are remembering. Not by force, not by effort, not by conquest, but by being, by watching, by feeling, and above all, by loving. Because in the end, love is the clearest vision of all. Love sees through Maya effortlessly. Love knows no separation. Love needs no proof. Love simply is. And when you live from love, when you allow it to guide your choices, your relationships, your understanding of yourself, Maya begins to lose its power. You no longer chase happiness outside yourself. You no longer fear loss as if it defines you. You no longer cling to identity as if it were the whole truth. Instead, you open, you soften, you surrender. And in that surrender, you find peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but the kind that remains steady, even in the storm. That is the fruit of awakening. That is the gift of seeing through Maya, and that is the path we are all walking, whether we know it or not. So take a deep breath, feel your body, notice the space around you, and ask yourself, am I ready to wake up? If the answer is yes, then you already have. Because the moment you begin to question the dream, you are already awake. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who might need this reminder. And if you're ready to dive deeper into the forgotten wisdom of the self, hit subscribe, because the journey has only just begun. Until next time, seeker of truth, stay curious, stay open, and remember, all that matters is how much you loved.